The sky tore open with a ripple of silent light, a tear in the fabric of space that heralded the arrival of the alien predators. Their sleek, black ships emerged like dark phantoms, hovering above the remote forests and deserts of Earth. These creatures, known as the Croft, had scoured the galaxy for centuries, hunting the most dangerous life forms for sport. To them, Earth was just another target, a primitive planet filled with weak, scattered creatures ripe for the hunt. For the Croft, it was never a question of whether they would dominate, but how quickly. Their technology allowed them to cloak their presence, making them invisible to human detection. Their weapons, razor-sharp energy blades and plasma rifles, could slice through steel as easily as flesh. They were bred for the hunt, and Earth was the ultimate game reserve. But there were always survivors. John Mercer crouched in the shadows of an abandoned farmhouse, his heart pounding in his chest. He had seen the Croft firsthand. The once quiet rural town he called home had been obliterated in a single night, leaving behind only smoking ruins and corpses. Mercer, a battle-hardened veteran of countless conflicts, had barely escaped with his life, but he had seen enough to understand the threat. These weren't ordinary invaders. They didn't come to conquer or enslave. They came to kill, and they did it for sport. Beside him, Captain Gregor Thorne, a former Special Operations soldier, scanned the tree-line with a pair of binoculars. Thorne had been part of a covert government response team sent to investigate the sudden loss of communication from several outlying settlements. By the time his team arrived, they found only death. Like Mercer, Thorne had survived the initial onslaught by a stroke of luck, and now the two men found themselves on the same mission: survival. "We're not dealing with just any invaders," Thorne muttered, lowering the binoculars. His voice was grim, laced with a growing dread. "These things are different. They hunt like animals, but they've got tech that's beyond anything we've seen. They enjoy this." Mercer's jaw tightened as he looked out at the dark horizon. "They've never hunted humans before," he said quietly, his tone colder than the night air. "They think we're easy prey. But they're wrong." Mercer had fought in enough wars to know that arrogance was the downfall of many enemies. He had seen too many overconfident opponents fall because they underestimated the resolve of those they faced. The Croft might have superior technology, but they had no idea what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the brink. And Mercer was determined to teach them. The first encounter had been nothing short of a massacre. A Croft hunting party had descended on a nearby village, slaughtering every man they found. The creatures had moved like ghosts, swift, silent, merciless. The few who had tried to fight back had been killed in seconds, their rifles useless against the Croft's energy shields. By the time Mercer and Thorne arrived, it was too late to save anyone. The village was nothing more than a charred wasteland. But Mercer had learned something that day. He had watched the Croft move, studied their tactics, their patterns. They were highly skilled, but they were also predictable. Like any predator, they relied on fear and chaos to subdue their prey. Mercer, however, was not a man who frightened easily. "We'll hit them tonight," Mercer said, his voice low but steady. "Catch them when they least expect it." Thorne raised an eyebrow, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "You sure about that? I mean, we're outgunned, outmatched, and there's no backup coming. The government's not even sure what we're up against. For all we know, we're the last line of defense." Mercer smirked, though there was no humor in it. "That just means we've got nothing to lose." The plan was simple, but effective. Mercer had seen the Croft's hunting patterns. They would scout the outskirts of human settlements before moving in for the kill. They relied on their cloaking technology to stay hidden, but Mercer knew the terrain better than they did. He and Thorne set up crude traps along the narrow forest trails, using whatever supplies they had scavenged: tripwires, explosives, sharpened metal spikes. They didn't have much, but they didn't need much. Hours passed in tense silence as the two men waited in the darkness. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional snap of a twig beneath an animal's feet. But then, just before midnight, Mercer heard it. The faint hum of alien machinery, the telltale sign of the Croth's cloaking devices. "They're here," Thorn whispered, his voice barely audible. Mercer nodded, gripping his rifle tightly. The Croth might have had the advantage of technology, but humans had the advantage of desperation, and desperation made for dangerous prey. In the distance, Mercer caught the faintest glimmer of movement, something invisible shifting between the trees. He didn't wait. With a sharp exhale, he triggered the first explosive. The ground erupted in a blast of fire and shrapnel, and the air filled with an unearthly screech. One of the Croth hunters appeared, its cloaking device malfunctioning as it staggered from the explosion. "Now!" Mercer shouted, and he and Thorn opened fire. The Croth wasn't expecting resistance, let alone a coordinated ambush. Plasma bolts lit up the night as it tried to fight back, but the damage was already done. Mercer's trap had worked. The creature's blood sprayed across the ground as it fell, its body riddled with bullets and shrapnel. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Mercer lowered his rifle and looked at Thorn. "They're not invincible," he said, his voice calm. "We can kill them." Thorn nodded, a new resolve hardening his features. "Then let's hunt." The tide had turned. The Croth had come to Earth to hunt humans, but they were about to learn a brutal truth. Humans were far more dangerous than they realized. The Croth hunters prowled through the forest, moving with eerie precision. Their cloaking devices shimmered in the moonlight, making them nearly invisible to the naked eye. They were the galaxy's apex predators, beings who had never known defeat. Yet, tonight, something was different. The dense trees and the shifting shadows concealed more than just their prey. This world was starting to feel dangerous. John Mercer crouched low in the underbrush, eyes scanning the perimeter. His mind was sharp, calculating. In the days since their first successful ambush, he had pushed his men harder, adapting human tactics to exploit the Croth's overconfidence. They had learned to stay silent, blend with the environment, and use the aliens' arrogance against them. Now, it was the aliens who were being hunted. To Mercer's right, Gregor Thorn knelt, his rifle aimed at the narrow pathway where they knew the Croth would pass. Thorn had become Mercer's second-in-command, his tactical mind working in sync with Mercer's raw instinct for survival. They hadn't spoken much since the first kill, but they didn't need to. Each man knew what the other was thinking. The air was thick with tension as they waited. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a distant branch sent adrenaline surging through their veins. Then, the soft hum of alien machinery reached Mercer's ears, the unmistakable sound of the Croth cloaking devices. He motioned silently to Thorn. "They're close," Thorn mouthed, his voice barely a whisper. Mercer nodded, his hand steady as he gripped his rifle. The trap was set. The Croth had no idea they were walking straight into a killing field. Just as predicted, 3 of the alien hunters emerged from the shadows, their bodies shimmering with the faint distortion of their cloaks. They moved in formation, weapons at the ready, unaware of the human ambush lying in wait. They believed they were tracking helpless prey, but tonight the roles had reversed. In a swift motion, Mercer triggered the trap. Explosive charges hidden beneath the leaves detonated with a deafening roar, sending dirt and shrapnel flying in every direction. One of the Croth was thrown into the air, its cloaking device flickering as it crashed into the ground. Before it could recover, Mercer and Thorn opened fire, their bullets cutting through the alien's exposed form. The second Croth reacted faster, activating its energy shield as it charged toward Mercer, plasma blade in hand. Mercer dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the searing blade as it slashed through the air where he had stood moments before. He rolled to his feet, his movements fluid and precise. The alien swung again, but Mercer was ready this time. He sidestepped the attack, shoving the barrel of his rifle into the creature's exposed neck and pulling the trigger. The Croth's head snapped back, its shield flickering out as its body crumpled to the ground. Thorn had already taken down the third Croth, his shots precise and lethal. The forest fell into a sudden, eerie silence, broken only by the distant crackle of dying flames from the explosion. Mercer wiped the sweat from his brow, his heart pounding in his chest. "They're learning," Thorne said, stepping over the body of the fallen alien. "They're adapting." "So are we," Mercer replied, his eyes scanning the tree. "But they still don't understand us." "Not really." The humans had the advantage now, not in technology or firepower, but in sheer adaptability. The Croft, for all their advanced gear and physical prowess, were used to creatures that panicked when hunted. Humans didn't panic. They fought back. Mercer and his group had been striking at the Croft for days now, turning the forest into a labyrinth of death traps and ambush points. They used everything at their disposal: old hunting rifles, homemade explosives, even sharpened branches. Anything could become a weapon in their hands. They had also begun scavenging alien tech, using pieces of Croft armor and weaponry to give themselves an edge. The Croft, unused to being challenged, grew more reckless with each passing day. They still believed they were in control, still convinced that humans were mere animals to be slaughtered. But Mercer knew better. The Croft were now the ones being stalked. Every step they took brought them closer to their doom. That night, the Croft launched a counterattack, desperate to reclaim their dominance. They sent a larger force into the forest, confident that overwhelming numbers would crush the human resistance. Mercer had anticipated this. The Croft believed in brute force, in overwhelming their prey with superior numbers. But the humans fought with cunning and precision. Mercer's group was spread out across the forest, each man assigned to a specific ambush point. They didn't need to speak. They communicated through subtle hand signals, moving silently as shadows through the trees. The Croft, for all their technology, could not see what was coming. As the alien force advanced, Mercer watched from his vantage point high in the trees. The Croft moved in tight formation, their weapons ready, scanning for any sign of human movement. They were expecting another direct confrontation. They were wrong. A series of explosions erupted from beneath their feet, sending alien soldiers flying. Panic spread through their ranks as more traps detonated, each blast perfectly timed to sow chaos. Mercer's men opened fire from hidden positions, cutting down the Croft one by one. The forest, once a peaceful refuge, had become a killing ground. By the time the smoke cleared, the Croft force was decimated. Bodies lay scattered across the forest floor, their advanced weapons useless in the face of human ingenuity. Mercer climbed down from his perch, his eyes cold and determined. He walked through the battlefield, stepping over the bodies of the fallen aliens. "They're not hunters anymore," Thorne said, joining him. "No," Mercer agreed. "Now they're the prey." The Croft had come to Earth expecting an easy hunt, but they had underestimated the resolve of humanity. They had underestimated Mercer. The tide had turned, and the hunters had become the hunted. But this was only the beginning. The real war was just getting started. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the battlefield. What was once a dense forest had been reduced to smoldering ruins, charred trees and broken ground serving as a testament to the brutality of the fight between the Croft and the last human resistance. In the distance, the alien mothership loomed, its obsidian hull reflecting the cold night like a predator's eye. This was the heart of the Croft invasion, and Mercer knew it was where everything would end. John Mercer stood at the edge of the destruction, his rifle slung over his shoulder and a jagged scar running down his cheek, a mark of survival from their last encounter with the alien hunters. His eyes were fixed on the mothership, the last target in their fight for survival. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now it was here. The Croft had underestimated humans for the last time. "Everyone in position?" Mercer asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper as he adjusted the makeshift explosives strapped to his belt. "Locked and loaded," came the reply from Gregor Thorne, crouching behind a pile of debris a few yards away. Thorne, once a soldier used to following orders, had evolved into a guerrilla tactician. He had learned from Mercer, and now he moved to the battlefield with lethal precision, his mind focused on one goal: victory. Behind them, scattered across the remains of the forest, the rest of their small band of survivors waited in silence. Each man knew what was at stake. There were no speeches, no last-minute words of encouragement. Everyone understood the reality. Either they would destroy the Croft here and now, or humanity would be wiped from the face of the earth. "They know we're coming," Thorne muttered, checking his rifle one last time. "They'll be ready." Mercer nodded. "Good. Let them be ready. It won't save them." The plan was simple, brutal, and efficient. Mercer had spent weeks analyzing the mothership's defenses, studying the patterns of Croft patrols, the layout of their landing zones, and their communication network. They had scavenged what alien tech they could from fallen hunters, reverse engineering it just enough to use it against them. Their best chance was to strike directly at the mothership. The Croft operated with a strict command hierarchy. Take out the leadership and the rest would collapse. That's where the explosives came in. If they could plant enough charges on the ship's power core, they could cripple the entire operation, possibly even destroy the ship itself. But to do that, they had to get inside. As they moved through the ruins, the first signs of resistance appeared. Croft hunters patrolled the outer perimeter, their sleek armor glinting in the moonlight, plasma rifles slung over their shoulders. But Mercer had anticipated this. He motioned silently to Thorne and the others. They fanned out, disappearing into the darkness like shadows. The Croft patrol barely had time to react. A series of sharp cracks rang out as silenced rifles dropped the first wave of alien soldiers. The humans moved with ruthless efficiency, striking from the shadows and retreating before the Croft could mount a proper defense. It was guerrilla warfare at its finest, a tactic the Croft had never fully adapted to. They were bred to hunt, but not to defend. Within minutes, Mercer's team had cleared a path to the landing zone. The massive ramp of the mothership extended like the maw of a beast, ready to swallow them whole. This was it, the point of no return. "We go in fast and hit hard," Mercer whispered to Thorne, gripping his rifle. "No second chances. We get to the core, plant the charges, and get out." "Understood." Thorne nodded grimly. "Understood." They moved as one unit, slipping into the mouth of the alien ship. The interior was as cold and sterile as the Croft themselves. Smooth black walls lined with faintly glowing symbols, hallways that twisted in unnatural patterns, and the distant hum of alien machinery that echoed through the ship like a heartbeat. Every step they took was measured, every breath controlled. They had studied the layout from captured data, but nothing could prepare them for the sheer size of the mothership. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway ahead. Mercer raised his hand, signaling for the group to stop. From the shadows emerged a squad of Croft, their energy weapons glowing with lethal intent. This time, there would be no ambush, no traps. This would be a direct confrontation. Mercer fired first, his rifle spitting out bullets with deadly precision. Thorne followed suit, and the rest of the team joined in. Plasma bolts and bullets filled the air, lighting up the narrow corridor in a blaze of light and sound. The Croft were relentless, advancing with cold determination despite the human resistance. But Mercer's men were faster, more desperate, and they fought like cornered animals. One by one, the Croft soldiers fell. Mercer advanced through the smoke and chaos, his heart pounding, his mind focused on a single objective, the power core. It was their only chance. They reached it after what felt like an eternity of fighting. The core was a massive, pulsating structure at the center of the ship, glowing with an eerie green light. It was heavily guarded, but Mercer's team had already thinned the Croft ranks. They worked quickly, planting charges at key points around the core, each explosive carefully placed to ensure maximum destruction. "Time's running out," Thorne warned, glancing over his shoulder at the distant sound of reinforcements. "Just a few more seconds," Mercer grunted, setting the final charge. With the last explosive in place, they began their retreat. The Croft were closing in from all sides, but Mercer and his men moved with a singular purpose. They fought their way back through the ship, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. By the time they reached the exit ramp, the mothership's alarms were blaring, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. "Go!" Mercer shouted, as they sprinted from the ship and dove into the trees. The explosion rocked the night, a massive fireball erupting from the heart of the Croft mothership. The ground shook as the alien vessel disintegrated, pieces of molten metal raining down like meteors. The war was over. The Croft were finished. As the dust settled, Mercer stood among the wreckage, his chest heaving, his body covered in sweat and grime. Beside him, Thorne let out a weary breath, staring at the smoldering remains of the alien ship. "It's done," Thorne said, his voice barely audible. Mercer nodded. "Yeah, but it cost us everything." The humans had won, but at a heavy price. The Croft had come to hunt, but they had fallen to the most dangerous prey in the galaxy: humanity.